Middle of this process, it is it's starting to get a little bit later in the day. As you are in the middle of sewing, I think you are startled as you hear from behind you, Duck Newton, are you prepared for Duck Newton? What is the meaning of this? And behind you appears Minerva.
Minerva, your timing sucks. I this goat person, man, whatever was, I got hurt, and I'm just trying to keep it together long enough to save its life. You don't know anything about sutures, do you? I don't even know if you have flesh. I should come to think of it, right? You're like a ghost.
I'm not a ghost, Duck Newton. I have Is this creature you're tending to a foe?
I don't know. I think so. My gut tells me that this guy and his buddies are what been responsible for some of the bad stuff that's been going down lately. I can't say for sure, but yeah. I mean, Beacon almost cut his head off, and like I felt like shit about it, honestly. And he was hurt, and I was just trying to fix him up. I don't know. For information, we could grill him or something.
She shakes her head and she says, Beacon tried to do what Beacon is supposed to do, what you're supposed to do. Doug Newton, dispatch this beast at once. It's vulnerable to you. Strike true. Drive your beacon into its heart.
Listen, I was about to say let's put it to a vote, but yes, let's see how no, we're not doing that. I'm not going to kill an unarmed, unconscious creature in cold blood. I'm not going to do it. Especially when I don't know what his intent is.
She shakes her head and looks down for a minute. And we've talked about how like you always see her in silhouette, so it's really hard to actually kind of read her. But she is furious. You can tell just from her body language. And she says, your job is not to befriend your foe, Duck Newton. It is to vanquish them. It is to leave them no quarter, no hope to which to cling. Your calling is to paint your besieged homeland in the blood of those who would see your world destroyed. Now strike, Duck Newton.
You listen to me. I'm going to save this weird goat, and then I'm going to try to teach it English or some shit, and I can figure out what's going on here. If you continue to push me to kill this thing, I will walk away from all of this. And if you need evidence that I am not kidding with you, look at the past fucking 20 years, Minerva. I'm going to do this on my own terms. Now, unless you can hold a thread, I would ask that you leave me the fuck alone and let me sew.
She freezes and she puts a hand to her forehead, and you can see her silhouette start to tremble a little bit, and she says, I and something happens that hasn't really happened before, which is twice in the same night Minerva comes back. Usually she just comes back at that same appointed time that she always comes back, and now she is making a second appearance. And as she shows up, as you sort of see her appear, she's standing still, and you hear that blues music that you heard so many months ago when she tried to appear to you, and you saw her sort of frozen in place, and you can't hear her, and you get the impression she can't hear you, and she becomes unfrozen and sort of holds up a finger, sort of telling you to wait, and eventually that music fades, and she speaks, and she says, I owe you an apology, Duck Newton. I was trained in my order's temple for nearly a century, but it seems that you can't train temperance, can you?
Listen, I'm sorry that I kind of snapped at you. I was under a lot of pressure, and I've never had to sew up, well, neither a goat nor man, to say nothing of a goat man. So it was pretty intense.
Yes, I hope you don't think less of me, Duck Newton. Training a champion remotely like this, it requires absolute trust, and if that trust was harmed, Duck Newton, it would make me a less effective tutor to you.
Nah, we're fine. Just try to remember next time. I mean, I don't know a lot about sword fighting and, flips and kicks and stuff, but I spent my whole life trying to figure out how I think about stuff. And in the woods, you get a lot of time to sort of go back and forth on that kind of thing. And I know where I stand, Minerva. I know where I stand.
She sits down, which you've never seen. You see her pull something, actually. She walks away from you, and then you see her sort of miming almost, like she's pulling a chair over, and she sits down, and she takes her hand and is kind of rubbing it over her bald head, and she looks at you, and she says, I think that will serve you better than any training I could ever give you, Duck Newton. There are things I haven't told you, Duck Newton, because if I told you them, they would damage the trust that we have, that trust that is imperative to this process. My rage towards your world's assailants, Duck, it is born of my own world's destruction. My home, Duck, my planet, Mira Laviniac's orbital body 5. Or 5 for short. It's a bit of a mouthful. It too was connected to another place, far flung from our own world. Like your world, ours became tethered, and the beings that poured through that fissure, Duck, we lost and we kept losing, and that is why my passion manifests as fury, Duck. I know your toil, and it makes me tired, she says. And I want to drive home. You have never seen anything like this from Minerva. She is always sort of this larger than life, always bombastic sort of warrior champion. And this is not that.
Damn, Minnie, I'm really sorry about your world and everything. That's tough.
She puts up a hand and stands up, and she says, please, just forget about this conversation, Duck Newton. You need further training, and my lessons will not be as effective without your complete trust. She looks around and she says, my time is almost up. Your visions, Duck. Are you still having your visions?
Yeah, they're kind of back and forth on whether or not they're helpful or not, but I'm still getting them.
And your latest vision?
Yeah, it was a real barn burner, honestly, of meteor destroying everything. It was pretty intense.